In this video, I'm going to be analysing a match I played recently, and the setup I used was the Yonex SV Lite 98, and the strings are Solinco Outlast 1.25. That's in the mains, and in the crosses, I've got Tecnifibre Black Code 4S 1.20. Both strings are strung at £62. I did go up quite significantly from the last match. I was looking for a little bit more control, especially when the conditions get old, and I was hoping I'd be able to hit through the court a bit more with a bit more control. But let's have a look at how it played. I'll try and list all the strengths that I found and all the weaknesses, so we can get a better idea of how this setup performed. So yeah, let's get to it. The first thing I want to touch on is the serve quality, specifically the first serve. I thought there was at least a couple more mile an hour on average for my first serve, which would result in a few more free points. Not searing pace, but an improvement on what I can usually produce. And those 3 points, for me, especially with my game style, is always welcoming. So it's something I should mention, and I will. The first serve placement and pace, combination that provides me with a decent enough platform to start off the point. And I would say it was an upgrade on the previous setup that was strung with the same strings but at £50. So this is at 62, and an improvement on the first serve over the £50 strung setup. The next strength for this setup was its ability to hit through the court. Not as much as I would like, but it was an improvement again on the previous setup that was strung a bit lower. And it meant I could stay in the rallies longer, which naturally on the slower surfaces, that's going to happen anyway. And I could maintain aggression as long as I had control over the trajectory of the ball, which did become an issue as the balls got older and the launch angle off of the ball was a bit higher. But regardless, it was an improvement, and so I could stay in the rally longer and not have to take my foot off the gas as much. I could try and maintain that aggression, stay on the front foot, and for the most part, stay in front of the rally, although my opponent is skilled enough to reverse the momentum in a split second. And it did happen a few times in the match. We'll get into that, but overall I thought the setup did what I asked of it to improve with the slower conditions, and any improvement is good improvement. I was even able on occasion to reverse a few points that previously I would have stood very little chance of doing so. And this was under the lights during the night session, so the conditions could be even slower, although sometimes the lights cause the surface to slick up. It's a bit weird, I'm not sure why that is, but on this occasion, the ball started to bounce a little lower, and because the surface is so dry already, it slowed it up even further. But even so, I was able to reverse a situation where I was way behind in the point, and that's not something I'm usually able to do against an opponent of this quality. The first drawback of this setup I want to mention is the second serve. Well, specifically under these conditions, because I didn't feel like I got enough purchase off of the surface, and there's not enough pace as well to really trouble my opponent. And so a lot of the time I was starting my second serve points on the back foot, and that's a difficult position to be in against an opponent who's just as good, or if not better than I am. So it's something to ponder on. I do think I can further increase the weight of the second serve, maybe with a combination of a racket and string adjustment, or even just adjusting the tension even higher. But we'll see what I've got cooked up in future. But yeah, the second serve was an issue. It wasn't a huge issue, not like in the previous match, but it's still causing problems. And next, I need to mention that the launch angle with the string savers and the dampener, I've got the string savers in a crisscross pattern on the bottom second and third cross string. Altogether there's about 8 in total, and a dampener on top of that, so they're all raising the launch angle too high. And for some reason I didn't really clock onto this while I was playing. I didn't think it was that big an issue, but reflecting on the play, it's kind of obvious. And what makes it worse is we played another match a couple days later where I added another couple string savers to try and increase the trajectory control, which it does, but again, further raising the launch angle, further reducing my length control. And it was only after I made the mistake twice and reviewing the footage that I realized the launch angle was far too high to be playable. And yeah, that was a big mistake. Hopefully I don't repeat it, because that analysis of the setup with the extremely high launch angle is coming up in the next video. It's not something I'm looking forward to, but we will do it just because it's important to not make that mistake ever again. These clips are of a few rallies where we can see the effect of the high launch angle. I'm having to adjust my strokes to overcompensate really for that higher trajectories coming off of the string bed, and as a result I've hit the net from overcompensating on a few occasions, and on some other rallies just completely missing the baseline as a result as well. So interesting though. And this final clip that we're looking at here, it's a good point from him. In fact, we'll watch it again. And because I'm worried about the lack of length control, you can actually see my shots getting progressively shorter and shorter. During this rally, I actually start off at least neutral, maybe even in front, but my opponent quickly reverses it and I just can't get back in front of the rally. Neutral is at best what I achieve, but as you can see, it's getting shorter and shorter until he can step in on that forehand and clean it down the line for a winner. So it's a good point from him. And finally, this is the most interesting of all, and I don't mean that in a good way. Look at that. I mean, that's shocking how high that came off of the string bed. But yeah, it wasn't a terrible setup. That was just the worst part of it. It was, with the older balls especially, it really does exaggerate the higher launch angle and the lack of length control. With newer balls, you don't really notice it as much, and I think that is what was playing on my mind a little bit. But there you go. Overall, a good setup. Really good for first serves. Second serves, not so much. It needs a bit more weight with the older balls. With newer balls, I guess I could get away with it because of the extra bounce, pace and spin that the newer balls gives us. And it did give me the opportunity to reverse a few rallies where I was behind and able to get back into neutral, and on some occasions actually win the point outright from positions where I feel like most of the time I wouldn't. So the setup is by no means terrible. It just has a few weaknesses that were amplified by the conditions, such as the high launch angle and the not so heavy second serves, which, you know, the older balls really do amplify those weaknesses of the setup. Overall, I was pretty happy with it. And there is another analysis video coming out soon where I didn't fix this problem, because even though in hindsight it's obvious, I didn't see it at the time. And we again played with older balls. In fact, I think we played with the same balls, so they're even more worn and they're amplifying the weaknesses even further. And that's what it took for me to realize the true weaknesses of this setup. And so, yeah, we'll go into detail on that video, and we'll try to address it before the next match. But yeah, that brings us to the end of this analysis. I want to thank everyone for watching. I do appreciate it. If you enjoyed it, it might be worth checking out the other videos on this channel, and staying tuned for future ones that are coming out soon as well. So hopefully I'll see you all there, and until then, everyone, take care.